Hey friend, welcome to day 6 of our video mobility series. Today we're going to be focusing on upper body and torso, trying to improve some movement both in our spine as well as our shoulders. Now before we get started, you're going to want to make sure that you have shoes or not, whatever feels most comfortable on your feet. You'll want a water bottle close by, and you will also need a resistance band. Now, if you don't have a resistance band, don't stress. You can also use a skipping rope or even like a house coat tie. Anything that's relatively long that you'll be able to use with your arms. All right, so pause the video if you need to grab anything. Otherwise, let's get started. For our first mobility exercise for the day, we are going to start in a seated position. So we're going to come down to our bum. We're going to cross the legs here as comfortably as we can, or get into a position that feels right for you. We're going to begin with some gentle flexion and twisting through the spine. So just take this nice and slow. As with this mobility series, there is no rush on anything. This is where you meet your body where you're at, and just take it one moment at a time. So the first thing that we're going to start with in our seated position is arms up overhead, reaching to the sky, pressing those fingers nice and high, and then gently we're going to rotate one way and drop the hands. Now that one arm should end up kind of on the knee and the other one reaching slightly behind. Now because this is our first mobility drill for the day, you might be feeling a little bit stiff here, so take it nice and slow. We just want to go to that initial rotation that our body allows. When we start to feel that warm up a little bit, then we can crawl the fingers, use the hand to get a little bit more of a twist. Take your time here, check in with yourself. If you've got a little bit more movement, follow your body as it tells you. Dropping the shoulders. Good. Now we're going to bring it back up to center, arms up, straight again, big reach, dropping to the other side. Starting with that first range of motion, and then as our body tells us, we move it slightly more. Now I really encourage you not to follow that impulse to really crank your spine here. We just want gentle movement. Good. Follow it as you feel yourself release a little bit more. And then we're going to do it one more time on each side. So coming back to the center, reaching nice and upright. You should already feel a little bit of some warmth there in your spine. Twisting back to that first side, you might find that you can start at a slightly further position here. Using those hands to gently assist us. Head nice and upright. Core nice and tight. Now if you feel this anywhere else, say if it's pinching in your shoulders or your hips, take it back a notch. Good, coming to the center. Ooh, that feels good. Reaching, and then other side last time here. Gazes forward, we're not hunching or trying to be long in our spine. Good, bring it back to the center, nice and gentle. Check in with yourself, do a little bit of rotation. How are you feeling? A little bit of warmth in there? Good. Take a couple seconds if you need to. We're gonna then come to a seated position long on our mat. We're going to do, you probably did this move as a kid, and unfortunately it usually does feel harder as an adult, but feet are going to be shoulder width apart, fingers are going to be facing your bum, slight bend in the elbows tucked back. We are going to be reaching up. So this is a nice full body stretch through the arms, through the legs, through the back, pressing nice and high, squeezing through our core, feeling a nice stretch across the body. Couple seconds here, pressing those hips as high as they'll go, dropping down. Okay, we're gonna do 4 total, so take a couple seconds. You might even feel that in your wrists a little bit. Just meet yourself where you're at. Correct your, if you need to make any adjustments, then do so. Here we go, number 2, hips nice and high. Focusing on our breath here, core nice and tight. Opening up through those shoulders and those chest, and that chest. Good, bring it down. I know these are tough. Take a couple seconds if you need to let your wrists relax. You can always flip them the other way, give them a little bit of a stretch there. Moving on to number 3 of 4, hips come up. I feel a nice strong stretch here through my shoulders and my biceps. How about for you? Check in with yourself. Where are you feeling this? If your bum can't get all the way, that's okay. I just want you to meet me where you're at. Good, dropping down. We've got one last one. Stretch out those wrists if you need to. Then we're moving on. Last time here. Planting those feet, pressing through the hips, glutes nice and high. This reminds me of crab walks as a kid, but somehow they didn't feel quite like this. Good, bring it down. Nice job, we're done there. Let your wrists come out of that just a little bit. You can do a gentle stretch where palms are facing you, letting that come down a little bit. Check in with yourself though. How did that feel? For me, I feel a nice release through my upper body at this point. It was difficult for sure, but I'm feeling the impact of that stretch. Okay, take a couple seconds if you need to. We're going to flip onto our knees. So we're going to be in a 4-point kneeling position, core nice and tight here, knees in line with hips, wrists in line with shoulders. Feet can be flat or pivoted, not a big deal either way, but generally speaking, our lower body is going to stay the same through this motion. So we're going to keep bum up, and what we're going to do is drop the shoulders. So we're bringing the shoulders down, bum stays up, stretching through the shoulders, so reaching those fingers, and bum stays up. So we should feel a nice stretch through the shoulders as well as the back. Good, take a couple more moments here. If you need to, you can always come up to the elbows for a couple seconds, rest it out, and then go back in. Good, coming out of that nice and slow. Back up to our 4-point kneeling. Ooh, that felt good. Give yourself a couple moments here. We are going to come up to a standing position. So if you just want a couple seconds just to feel that out, come out of that, totally fine. This is where you're going to need your resistance band, so make sure you go ahead and grab it there. We're going to start with arms fairly wide here, as wide as they'll go, so they don't need to be tight with the ball or with the band. Feet are going to be shoulder width apart. You can do this from a seated position or a standing position, so if you want to stay on the ground, by all means do so. We're going to start slight bend in the elbows. We're coming up overhead, reaching open through the chest. If you have the range of motion, coming all the way back. Now, one thing that I notice sometimes when I have clients do this, I'm just getting into a different position, but feel free to do whatever's comfortable, is if they don't have the range of motion, they're really fighting that entire sequence. We really only want to go as far as those arms will stay straight. So slight bend in the elbows at all times, just so we're not locking out the elbows. We're coming back, nice stretch through the chest. If this is as far as you can go and you feel a nice stretch across your chest, that's great. But if you have that range of motion to go behind, do so. Sometimes that resistance band will allow a little bit of give. A house coat or a skipping rope might not be as forgiving, but just use what you got. Okay, we're gonna do this a few times, so take your time here. Core nice and tight if you are in a seated position, especially as you're reaching over. And this actually applies to standing as well. We don't want that rib cage to be popping out. We want to be nice, tucked, and engaged through the core. Good, should feel a nice stretch across the arms and the shoulders. Try not to hunch those shoulders as we come around, so nice and intentional there. Let's go for 2 more. Good. Last one. Should be feeling fairly warm by now. Good, bringing it back. Good, set that aside. Nice job, guys, so far. I'm feeling a nice release right through my arms, which is great, especially if you work at a desk job or anything like that where you're constantly typing. We don't often realize how tight our forearms and our arms and our wrists get just from that motion. All right, so for our last stretch, we are gonna come to a lying position. So on our stomachs, feet are going to be flat. Elbows are going to be tucked in. You have 2 options here, okay? The first option being, if you don't have a ton of mobility through your back, you can just come up to a slightly modified position here. So from the elbows, chest nice and upright, should feel a nice stretch through the lower back. So this is a modified abdominal stretch. This is also a classic yoga pose. Couldn't tell you the name of it, but if you're familiar with it, you're familiar with it. Okay, now if that feels good enough, you're gonna stay there. But if you do have that extra range of motion, hands can come a little bit further, coming all the way up for a full abdominal position. Full upper dog. Core nice and tight, pressing those shoulders down. You should feel like a nice stretch across the front, maybe a little bit into your back, but it shouldn't feel like an intense pain. If it does, I would suggest taking that regression. You might even feel yourself relax a little bit into it. A few more moments here. Good, now bring it down. Bending through the knees and the arms to come out of that. Check in with yourself here. I'm gonna do a little bit of just a body scan, maybe a few bird dogs, or sorry, not bird dogs, cat-cows, just to feel that rotation in the torso just a little bit more. Follow what your body is asking of you right now. When you're ready, just come back to a neutral position. You can stay in a seated position. If there's any other stretches you would like to do, by all means do so. But that is day 6 of our mobility series. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know, how did this feel? Is your upper body tighter than your lower body? Is there something that felt uncomfortable or something that surprised you? I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you in the next video.